All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Happy to see a room full of people here at NRF 2022. My name's Nick Whitney. I'm with Brain Corporation. Our company is a technology company focused on automation and specifically partnering with companies such as Tennant Company, who I'm joined on the stage here by Chris Volan, to create autonomous mobile robots for different purposes. And we'll be talking a little bit about that today. Our special guest here is Anthony Hooker, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Southeastern Grocers. Southeastern Grocers, if you're not familiar, is one of the larger grocery chains in North America, operating primarily in the Southeast. Welcome, Anthony, and thanks for joining us. And welcome to you, Chris.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Anthony, maybe just to kind of get started, do you have any, maybe can you just share with the group any tidbits about how things are going at Southeastern Grocers? It sounds like the business is doing well, and you guys are pushing through all the adversity that COVID and these things keep throwing our way. Any comments you want to share?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, we're shockingly in the southeast of the United States.
That's a good name.
We've 425 stores from New Orleans, Louisiana, through Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, but about 75% of our footprint is in Florida, and our store support center is in Jacksonville, Florida. We're the parent company of three main banners. Winn-Dixie, for those of you that might know, been around since 1925. Harvey's, which is more like a soft discount format, which has been around since 1923. And our newest baby is Fresco y Mas, which we launched in the summer of 2016. It's our Hispanic format, which is predominantly in South Florida, moving northbound. So that's a little bit about who we are. We went through a restructure back in 2018, and frankly, we haven't looked back since that time. We're about to announce our full year fiscal 21 results here in a few weeks, and it will mark the 18th consecutive quarter of meeting or beating guidance. And there's a few what we like to call SEGers in the audience here, but it's because of the team that has produced those results over the last couple of years. And I think it was Winston Churchill that said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." We haven't. So we have gone from kind of survival mode to thriving mode. We restructured the business, and we've branded it as, first of all, correcting the business.
Right.
Nick, getting ourselves fit for purpose, and now we're in this third phase of the relay race, which is getting fit for growth, which is all in service of the fourth phase, which is being fit to win.
Outstanding. Thanks for that summary. Well, why don't we get into the topic du jour? One of the things we wanted to talk a little bit about is some of the challenges associated with labor staffing. Certainly, as we've been up on the show floor, the expo hall here, and talking with different retailers, it's a pretty common concern that we're hearing is difficulty with staffing, with absenteeism, with filling roles, certainly on the front lines of your retail operation. I'm just curious, how has Southeastern Grocers experienced difficulty with labor? Any comments you can make about how that challenge affects you?
Yeah, so the way we look at it, Nick, is we kind of tee it up as kind of number one, the situation, number two, the complication, and number three, the resolution.
Right.
So talk about the situation for just 1 second. I mean, it's pretty ubiquitous, the labor challenges that exist in the marketplace today. And we look at it in two ways. Number one, supply, labor supply, but number two, labor inflation. The Florida legislature just passed November before last a piece of legislation that calls for a $15 minimum wage, which is stepped $1 per year over the next what is now 4 years. So $15 is right in front of us from an inflation perspective. And if you look at actually supply, a lot of people are familiar with the Great Resignation and the hospitality industry, the cruise industry, restaurant industry. We're in an area of the country where there's a lot of amusement park. So all of these industries are under significant pressure. So that's kind of the situation. The complication is if you actually go back to pre-COVID, our turnover rate in 2019 was at 65%, which for a food retailer is actually not too bad.
Right.
If you then fast forward to 2021, that 65% jumps to 79%.
Wow.
So that's a 14% increase, which is phenomenal. In fact, I was just talking with my head of people, my chief people officer, right before coming on, and he just let me know the period 13, so the last period of 2021, 108%.
Oh my.
So for every 100 people that you're hiring in the last month of last year, we're losing 108. Which tells you that the gravity of the situation from a supply perspective, and obviously the inflation piece. The other piece that's significant is not just turnover, but it's call out. So by call out, we measure. So if a store manager gives 100 hours of labor for a day or a couple of days, whatever that period of time is in. A typical store in a pre-COVID world would have a call-out rate in the 3 to 3.5 range. So Jennifer Shorts, our Vice President of Central Operations, is sitting here. When she ran a district, she was telling me the call-out rate was in that 3 to 3.5 range. So 3.5 hours were called out sick or for whatever reason from 100 hours that were slated. Well, that went up in 2020 in the first phase of COVID to around the 6 months. So it was about double. Then Delta came along, then Omicron came along, and I think most people are aware that Omicron is considered to be much more contagious.
Right.
I mean, Delta was 2 times more contagious than the original COVID. Omicron, 2 times more contagious than Delta, meaning 4 times more contagious. Maybe less deadly, but from a call-out perspective, we just hit our peak last week at 11.3. So that's 3 times what it was pre-COVID. So now I get a daily report. This morning it's down to 10.8. So it would appear that we've maybe hit our peak with Omicron, but the call-out rate and the turnover rate is what complicates that situation. And then from a resolution perspective, we have turned to partners like yourselves and Tenant to look at how can we automate, what can we automate, and it's not just about necessarily the old adage working smarter versus harder. I think we have to work smarter and harder. So we have to not necessarily reduce our hours, but reallocate our hours to a more customer-facing service orientation. And so if we can take out hours or repurpose hours or retool hours in the back office using automation, I think that's the way forward.
Outstanding. Let's try to bring Chris into the conversation too. Chris, you've obviously are, as a specialist within Tenant, focused on automation and robotics. I'm sure you've probably have you experienced some of the same situations at places in addition to Southeastern Grocers you want to share?
Yeah, you hit on 2 really strong points. One is the turnover. You just got to 100%. We have customers that were at 100% when they started automating. And the interesting thing is with 100% turnover, you think that means everybody leaves in a department. But there's folks there that have 30 years of experience. And there's folks there with 30 minutes experience and might not get to the 31st minute. So there's a lot of different kinds of people in there. That's the first thing. The second thing is we find that engaging people in this journey, the better we engage them, there's a lot of employee pride. And the more you engage them, the more you give them higher value tasks, more customer facing tasks, the things they like to do, people tend to stick around. I'm sure you see the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's gone are the days where it's space age technology, right? I think that customers are comfortable with automation. I mean, if you look at self-checkouts, in 2019, our self-checkout lanes, so we use the acronym SCO, self-checkout, our self-checkout lanes were about 25%. Now bear in mind, in the Southeast, we over-index to an older population. So from an adaptation perspective, we've not adopted self-checkout at the same speed as other national retailers. That being said, In 2019, self-checkout, although it was a quarter of our lanes, it was contributing about a third of our sales, a third of our transactions. Look at this year, we'll probably be around 50%. 50% of our lanes will be SCO lanes, and will contribute about 50% of the transactions. My point being that there's an adoption and adaptation of automation that is more ubiquitous and more acceptable. And I think to your point, Chris, you know, when we look at it, as I said, you know, as repurposing labor hours. I mean, the labor line in a store P&L is the number one expense line.
Right.
And I mean, I'm 55, I've been doing this for 40 years. It was the same 40 years ago, the number one line. I mean, all of us are somewhere between 7 and 10% labor percent as a cost of sales, unless you're someone like Aldi or Lidl that operate at, call it 5. But typically a conventional supermarket in the US market is around that 7 to 10 mark. So it's the number one line in the P&L. Right. And when we look at, you know, robotics, as you know, we're testing and piloting robotic scrubbers right now. We look at a labor saving of call it, just for napkin number's sake, somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. Right. So if you just did some napkin math and you did 1 hour per day times $15 per hour, we're open every day of the year bar Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's 363 days. And you multiply that by our 425 stores, that's $2.3 million napkin math. Now, if you said you saved 2 hours, that's 4.6. So somewhere between that 2.3 and 4.6 million dollars. That's a quantitative saving, which is huge. But to your point, there's also there's a level of accountability and ownership. So Kevin on Jennifer's team has been leading our pilot testing in Jacksonville. And I was at the pilot store before the holidays, and Matt, who's the store manager, the store merchandising manager at St. Marco, and Michael, who's the floor porter. I mean, it was amazing. You would have thought Michael had a pet. He's actually named his robot Rosie, and he is so prideful in the ownership of, and so, you know, and what it could all achieve, and the savings, and it uses less water, and I mean, he could go on far better than I could, but you've got that sense of ownership, which is great, because the very best associates, in my opinion, they own their own stores, they own their districts, they own the responsibility like it was their own company, number one. Number two, what you also get is a heightened level of accountability. Right. Because 75 to 80% of our floor cleaning is outsourced. Right. And if you outsource the cleaning, sometimes you outsource the responsibility, because the store manager gets to say to the district manager, well, you outsourced my contract, they didn't show up today, so the floor's dirty. Right. So well, maybe I think there's some more soft benefits
there's a human element that you're alluding to that I've seen a couple of times that it almost moves you. You know, one was a store that they have a new robot and a new robot operator. And the woman that was attached to the robot went home and told her daughter, she goes, I don't clean floors anymore. I'm a robot operator. And she was in tears as she's telling us this, because there's such immense pride in elevating what we're asking her to do. And then the other one I always think of is the gentleman who's the floor cleaner who goes to the store manager a week before Christmas and says, can I get the weekend off? I know it's the week before Christmas, but can I get the weekend off? And they're like, yeah, just show me how to use that thing again, but everybody wins. Right. That he feels so much more valued in the organization. The people appreciate him. They know that they can get the job done at a critical time of year, and he can spend time with his family, which now you keep him. And you talked about turnover, right? That's so important, is to give them reasons to keep coming back and staying.
Excellent. So Anthony, why now? Like, why is now the time to extend your capabilities with automation, particularly as it relates to the robotic floor care? I mean, is there urgency there, or why is now the time?
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about the obvious one, which is labor, and the quantitative savings from that number one line in the expense of the P&L. I also think that it goes beyond scrubbing because with the artificial intelligence that you guys are partnering now with Retech, we are able to scan the shelf, and there's so much more added benefit to that, whether that's on-shelf availability, whether that's POG, which is short for planogram, the planogram integrity, whether it's pricing integrity. I was teasing the regional vice president, Sean Sloan, in the pilot test that we saw last week, where the rotation hadn't taken part as precisely as it should have done with a new item. You can look at different flavors that aren't being placed. You can look at the facings. So the whole integrity of the POG, of that 4-foot section, can be so much velocity added to that, which ultimately gives a better customer experience, so you're not getting flavors mixed or sizes missed. So it's better for the customer. It's better for the associate, because we have something called LBI, which stands for location-based inventory. So we can be faster and more effective when it comes to actually refilling and restocking the shelf, and it actually takes steps out for the associate. So it's better for our associate, and it's better for our shareholders, because we are more efficient and more effective.
Outstanding. Chris, in your experience, what are best practices that retailers should be considering as it relates to adopting robotics and scanning?
It's a really good question. So, as you say what you're saying, Tennant and Brain have been known in the last 5 years as being able to clean floors. We got really good at it, clean floors autonomously, and now we're introducing this next level of value to our retail partners. I remember 10 years ago at a major retailer talking to a vice president about could we have automated floor scrubbers, and she says, that'd be great. She goes, what would be better is if it did something else too. And we listened to that, we heard that. So as we continue to pursue floor scrubbers, because that's what Tennant is and does, we're always saying in the back of our minds, what's next? And we get to that point. And to answer your question, what are best practices and how do we get there? It starts at the top. If your organization wants to be successful in making major change, and you can attest to this, everybody has to be bought in from the top down. I've seen people dangle the carrot, I've seen people show them a stick, and I've seen people hit them with the carrot. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but when you have top buy-in, that generally goes out to system-wide buy-in, and you operationalize a program. So no matter what it is you're trying to do, whether it's self-checkouts, robotic floor cleaners, robotic inventory management, top-down, deep and wide adoption, consistent messaging, operationalizes that program and makes it successful, because it'll be as successful as you guys organize it.
Excellent. The first line of this, the title of this presentation is From Data to Insights to Decisions. So maybe Anthony, could you talk a little bit about what are the insights that Southeastern Grocers is looking to receive from a project focused on scrubbing and shelf scanning?
Yeah, so the way I think about this is a pyramid. And there's 4 stratas, or 4 levels or stages, if you will, to the pyramid. At the 4th level, there's a whole bunch of data. And there's so much data now in companies that sometimes you can't see the wood, you can't see the forest for the trees. So the question is, do you turn that 4th level of data into information? So at level 3, we have information. So we've all got a bunch of information. And then the question with that 3rd level of information is, do you turn it into level 2? Do you turn it into insight? But level 4 data driving information, level 3 driving insight, level 2, all means nothing unless and until you turn it into action. Hence the reason for the conversation today, from data to insight to decision. So it's about data driving information, information driving insight, but insight actually driving decisions. So we've made a commitment to automated floor scrubbing. Right. We are now doing a proof of concept when it comes to inventory and shelf scanning management. And no pressure, but it'll be down to you guys to see if you can we'll deliver on that, because it's wonderful having the insight that the on-shelf availability is at, pick a number, 50, 60, 70%. Right. It's wonderful having the information that your promo isn't precise, that your pricing isn't precise, that the store location allows you to tell you that it's in the back room but not on the shelf. That all means nothing. Right. Unless and until that insight actually causes action. Mm-hmm. And that action that's now accessible, it's now affordable, actually returns that investment.
Outstanding. Yeah. Chris, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the conversations this week have not been about necessarily the technology or how it works or what happens and all that. Everybody was trying to get to your point. That's the action. What do I do? What do I give a store manager to say, these are the 5 biggest things you can do right now to improve that customer experience, to improve sales, right, to improve employee satisfaction? Everybody wins. And when you can narrow it down to those top 5 things, then when they do those top 5 things, you work on the next top 5 things. I think most of us today still feel like human fire extinguishers. We're just running out to the biggest looking fire, and it might not be the right fire. Right. And this gets you to the right point to do the right thing and get the right outcomes.
Outstanding. So another way to potentially interpret this is like a journey. You know, it feels to me like moving from one capability to, you talked about the levels of that hierarchy. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about the journey that Southeastern Grocers is taking with this and other initiatives as you modernize and look to drive decision to actions?
Yeah, so it's going back to the introductory remarks. We've gone through a financial turnaround that we architected in 2017, and we actually put into place in the early part of 18. Mm-hmm. But that, you can see, if you're on Wall Street and you're in an investment community, you can look at your computer screens and look at the balance sheet, and you can look at the P&L, and you can look at things like leverage and so on and so forth. That's easy to see on the screen. Right. So that's the financial turnaround. What you can't easily see unless you're in the company, in the stores, is you can't necessarily feel, touch, smell culture. Right. And there's been a cultural transformation in the organization. A culture of any company is only the sum of the people in it. So I always say you can copy our prices, you can copy our products, you can copy our technology, you can copy our processes, but you can't copy our people. Right. And we have gone through a cultural transformation as much, if not more so, than a financial turnaround. And we have this, inside of this cultural transformation, in fact, we're now the subject of the revered Harvard Business School who've written a case study. It's actually called SEG, a cultural transformation. But within that, we as a private company, we want to unleash people. We want to unleash people to fail. We want to applaud failure. And we come in the Southeast. The Southeast can be known as a slightly passive-aggressive geographical area of the country where bless your heart does not mean bless your heart. And we have a legacy at Winn-Dixie that's been a little bit of the victim, right, of that passive aggressiveness, where people have been afraid to put their head above the parapet, been afraid to take a risk for fear of getting hit by the carrot, and so on and so forth. So what we've tried to do, and that's not easy when you've had somebody doing either the same thing or working for the same company for 20, 30, 40 years. It's put your head above the parapet, take a risk. Right. But we have this expression called fail fast, fail quickly, fail cheaply, and fail forward. So it's about trying new things. It's about testing and learning. And if it doesn't work, that's okay.
Right.
Don't get hit by the carrot. Applaud the fact that you've at least tried. I used to be in IT. I used to run an IT shop, and we always applauded the war room hero. You know what we never applauded? Was the hero that avoided the war room in the first place. Because you don't necessarily know who these are. So it's about testing, it's about learning, it's about not having a fear of failure, it's about actually rewarding failure, provided they are thoughtful bets. Yeah. Make big bets, make thoughtful big bets. Now, if you make the same bet twice, if you screw up twice, that might be a different subject. But that's a cultural norm that we spend a lot of time talking about, and we call it building that muscle. Building that muscle and not being afraid to fail. And these tests that we're going through with partners like yourselves and the scanning test, we hope you can deliver on everything you say you can deliver, because actions speak louder than words.
That's right.
No pressure.
We're up for the challenge. And I appreciate the opportunity to spend time in some of your stores. I really enjoy going to the Winn-Dixie stores, and Chris and I both spent some time there. And it's interesting, we've bumped into you several times. It seems like you enjoy visiting the stores, and you put on your chief bagger tag. And what do you think really makes the Southeastern Grocers stores unique? Like, what do you really love about your company?
The people. I think that's really what makes us unique. We say that we're in the people business.
Right.
We just happen to sell groceries. Retailing as an industry, it's not like rocket surgery. It's IQ. It's an average IQ industry. If you can add, multiply, subtract, and divide, you can be successful in this industry. But it's an extremely high EQ industry. Social intelligence, emotional intelligence. That's what really gets you ahead. And the difference with Winn-Dixie and Harvey's and Fresco and Mass and Southeastern Grocers as a parent company is the people. And that is simply what makes the difference between us being average versus great, and how we show up. Because if it doesn't show up, you mentioned seeing me in stores. Right. That's the best part of my job. The best part of my job is being in stores. In our store support center, there's no check stand. That's why it's called a store support center, because it's a center there to support the stores. It's not a head office, it's not a headquarters, it's a store support center. So the best and most exciting part of my job is being in stores, talking with our associates who have got the best ideas, listening to customers. We talk about listening really loudly, listening to customers, what's on their mind. And I think that's what makes us different.
I agree, and in my experience with your employees, such as Chris Hall at your store where we're doing some of the testing, has been just really open to change, really open to new ideas, really open to experimentation, and supporting some of the things that we're doing. So I think that your messages about culture definitely resonate with me.
Sorry to interrupt. There was a saying yesterday which caught my ear, which I hadn't heard. I've always heard the only constant is change.
Right.
I heard a quote yesterday which I thought was great. If you don't like change, then the other alternative, which is irrelevance, may be far worse.
There you go. I like it. That's great. Well, we're just about a minute left. Chris, do you want to share? First of all, I want to thank Tennant for being such a great partner to us and participating here at NRF. And any closing remarks you want to add?
Just a closing question for you. And I know we have about a minute or so left. You said the other day something about when you first evaluated this and started this process, I think it was something along the lines, I don't put words in your mouth, I'll let you do it better than me, that it wasn't as difficult or complex as maybe you thought before you had seen it with your own eyes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you think of robots and artificial intelligence, and you think that could be, to an average IQ person, that could be somewhat daunting.
Sure.
And the reality is, when we first saw the pilot, it really wasn't, and it really isn't.
Yeah.
And and we have evidence with, for example, I was telling you about Michael, our floor porter in San Marco, in downtown Jacksonville, actually getting excited and teaching me how the whole thing works. Right. They say that genius is making the complex simple. And I think this is relatively simple, even though the world of robotics and AI may be complex.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We'll close it there. Appreciate all of you attending, and heartfelt thanks to you, Anthony, for your time.
Thank you.